Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com. Monday through Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. Ray Flowers breaks it all down for you from a fantasy sports perspective. Hey there, Ray Flowers of FantasyGuru.com. Another look behind the curtain today. Still can't get the backdrop to work properly. We'll get it working, I hope, for next week. So you get the green screen, you get to see the microphone. Normally you don't see it because it's hidden and, covered up by the fancy background. But I guess after all the time, the fancy backgrounds here in the year plus we've done the show, it's all right to go bland a little bit. We'll see if Russell Clay, who joins us in about a half an hour, will have his piano with him tonight or today or not. I am Ray Flowers of FantasyGuru.com. You find this show Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Monday through Friday, 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. It's a free show. You can watch us on youtube.com/@ElitePlusNetwork, facebook.com/FantasyGuruHQ. Yes, you can watch us in both those spots. You can actually ask questions and leave comments in both those spots that we address throughout the show. You can also watch us live on Twitter X @FantasyGuruSite. You can type in Fantasy Sports Daily to your podcast network and find us and listen to us as a podcast. You can always go to FantasyGuru.com, click that Elite Plus tab at the top of the page, and have at it. And remember, we have a huge deal. I probably should have made a whole banner here, but we have a banner. I probably should have made a page. We have a huge deal going on right now at FantasyGuru.com. I really encourage everybody to take advantage of it. You see us on the show here. You see myself and Justin Fensterman hosting. You see Rich Miletto, Tyler Beaker, Armando Mersal, Russell Clay, who we'll talk to today. You see them on all the time. You can get all their work over at FantasyGuru.com. $99 the rest of the way. You get it all. And you're going to hear me talk about this a lot here on the show because this is a fantastic deal. $99 gets you all the seasonal football coverage the rest of the way, get you all the DFS coverage the rest of the way, get you all the wagering coverage the rest of the way. The only thing it does not include is the Super Bowl guide. The Super Bowl guide is a totally separate and different thing. But everything else up until that point, whether it's seasonal, DFS, or wagering at FantasyGuru.com, you get it. You get all three of those, which means you get access to all the Discord rooms that are specifically set up for each of those scenarios. You get access to all the live streams. You get access to all the articles. You get access to all the rankings. You get access to the entire staff. All of it for just $99 the rest of the way. So click that subscribe tab in the top right corner of the page. Get signed up over at FG. You can always send a note to support at FantasyGuru.com. Ted Schuster gets most of those. Support at FantasyGuru.com if you got a question. But really great deal. It gets you an opportunity to see everything we've got to. Maybe your seasonal scenario has kind of gone down. Gives you the opportunity to do DFS or wagering. Maybe you wanted to check out what we have with the DFS and wagering side of things, and you haven't been able to pony up the extra money it costs at the start of the season. Now you can get in, check them both out, look ahead toward 2025. So check that out over at FantasyGuru.com. All right, today what are we talking about? We're talking about Thursday Night Football. Yeehaw! The game between the Eagles and the Commanders, 26-18. Eagles move to 8-2. Commanders fall to 7-4. We'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about news with a bunch of injured guys right now. DK Metcalf, George Kittle, Tony Pollard, Josh Jacobs, Jaylen Warren, Darnell Mooney, Nico Collins, JuJu Smith-Schuster, Harrison Butker, Kincaid, and LaPorta at the tight end spot. Some of those guys trending in the right direction, some of those trending in the wrong direction, including one of those tight ends already being ruled out. Just happened a few minutes ago here before we started the show. We'll visit with Russell Clay in about 25-30 minutes. He usually comes in about 12:30 Eastern time. He'll come in and talk to us about a host of young players. What does he think of Jayden Daniels, who we'll talk about here in a brief moment? Slow it down a little bit. What does he think about what he's seen from Jayden Daniels? We heard J.J. McCarthy dealing with some things with his knee. Had another procedure, even though it wasn't a surgery. Had another shot, basically PRP. We'll talk to him about what's the future hold. Is Sam Darnold sticking around with the Vikings? Is J.J. McCarthy still the future for the Vikings? We'll talk a little bit about that with Russell. MarShawn Lloyd looks like he'll be activated for the Packers. Who is MarShawn Lloyd? Who is Trey Benson? What's going on with Brian Thomas, Rome Odunze, Ladd McConkey, Tank Dell, and even CeeDee Lamb? Because there's a lot of people out there that don't know what to expect of Lamb. He ain't no rookie, but he's a youngish, prime, obviously career player who was expected to be the number one wide receiver by a lot of people, not us over at FG. We had Jamar Chase ahead of him, but I think Lamb was our two. Has not lived up to those expectations. What's it going to look like the rest of the way without his quarterback? We'll talk to Russell Clay about that. All right, let's talk about Thursday Night Football again. Eagles 26-18 victors here. Jayden Daniels was okay. He threw for 191 yards, a touchdown, and interception. He ran for 18 yards. The problem with Jayden Daniels is he's really slowed down in terms of his production. And he's still okay. He's still someone you can fire up. Was last night's effort disappointing? Yes. We talked to Tyler Bigger yesterday. He broke this game down, and he was basically saying, look, I'm not expecting a ceiling game from Jayden Daniels. Certainly didn't get that. So Tyler was right on that, his read of the game. We do this a lot with young players. We did it last year with CJ Stroud. We did it with Anthony Richardson. We, being the community, not necessarily me, certainly not me, not necessarily us at fantasyguru.com either. But what we do, as I'm air quoting, is we take a young player who starts off his career well. That guy's a star. We take a player who starts off as poorly, and he's terrible. Caleb Williams is terrible. Jayden Daniels is a star. Truth is probably right in the middle for both, right? Like there's still plenty of time for Caleb Williams to develop. There's tons of things going wrong with him around the Bears that have nothing to do with him. In the case of the Commanders, we started out blazing hot with Daniels. He had 4 rushing touchdowns in the first 4 games, I believe. Hasn't had one since. He was routinely running for 45, 50 yards. Not doing that much anymore. The vaunted deep ball and all. So we'll talk to Russell a little bit more about Jayden Daniels. I don't think anything we've seen the last couple of weeks from him is distressing or disturbing. But it is fair to point out that his statistical production in the fantasy space is on the wane. And it'd be one thing, we'd love to see that at the start and then him come on. It's not always how it works. Remember, we got matchups, the health of players around him, all that kind of stuff. But the bottom line is right now, Jayden Daniels has been, the last 3 weeks has been disappointing from a fantasy perspective. He hasn't even thrown it for 210 yards in 3 games. 3 touchdown passes in 3 games. So he's averaging 190 yards in a touchdown pass the last 3 games, basically what he did last night. Doesn't work. I think I saw he scored 13.5 points. That doesn't work. Now, if he does what he did as a passer and he runs for 80 yards last night, well, he's fine. And that's the benefit of going with Jayden Daniels, because if Matthew Stafford does that, Matthew Stafford runs for 8 yards if he's lucky, right? But last night we didn't get it from Jayden Daniels. We didn't get the coverage from his legs like we did on the other side with Jalen Hurts to cover what was a moderate passing game for Jayden Daniels. Now, Brian Robinson returned last night, and he did exactly what Brian Robinson has done all season long. He's basically scoring a touchdown a game on the ground. Last night, 16 carries, 63 yards, and a touchdown. There it is. And Jeff Mans was very vociferous about this yesterday on the Elite Sports Show, Monday through Friday, 3 to 6 Eastern on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. He said, you've got Brian Robinson. It's a tough matchup, but he's still a must start. I, on this show yesterday, said Brian Robinson is running back too. It's a must start. He didn't do anything fancy, and it's not like, going out there and getting 13 points is great, but he had 16 carries, 63 yards, and a touchdown. It's bottom level running back 2 stuff, and that's what it's going to continue to be. What holds him back, obviously, is the lack of pass catching because of his backfield mate, Austin Ekeler, and he's not an explosive running back, Ryan Robinson, so he really needs that volume, but he returned from the hamstring injury to exactly what he was doing before he got hurt. He's basically running for 60 yards and a touchdown week after week. That's kind of what we got. Did it again last night. Kind of going the Najee Harris route of we're going to volume you to death and give you that, running back 21 season, even if we don't do anything great. He did it yet again last night. Now, Austin Ekeler. I've written for years now the PPR running back myth article. And that article delves into the fact that those guys that catch passes for their primary value, Danny Woodhead, Naheem Hines, even Austin Ekeler at points of his career. These guys that rely on that part of the game to be a fantasy star are extremely uneven week to week, extremely uneven year to year. And in fact, there's not much carryover year to year. Like these guys will catch 58 passes one year, next year it's 32. Like it's not what you think. There are always running backs that catch a lot of passes that gain attention and gain our Tariq Cohen did it a few years ago. Like these guys gain our attention. But consistency there is really hard. Now, Austin Ekeler is one of the few who's been able to kind of refute that, to be fair. Yeah, he had 8 catches last night. Now, remember what I just said. He's basically refuted that. True. There's a lot of volatility week to week. He caught 8 passes last night. I think he had 8 catches the previous 4 games. He only had 2 carries last night with the return of Brian Robinson. Austin Ekeler is a dangerous play. It paid off last night, 8 for 89. It totally paid off, but that, again, was partly because of the way the Eagles were playing. That was probably because of the struggles of Jayden Daniels, who barely completed passes to his wide receivers last night. It was all dump-off city to Austin Ekeler, and he will have games like that. But no, that's the first game he's had like that in months. I mean, that has not been the norm for him. He's been using those 8 to 10 carries to really give him 45 rushing yards and help give him a floor. Last night it was 2 for 7. So, Ekeler is what he is. I don't think anyone's surprised by that. You live by the sword, you die by the sword with Austin Ekeler. And that's the way it's likely to be moving forward with the return of Brian Robinson. Terry McLaurin, I mean, games like this happen. And I saw someone in Discord, Salsa was saying, I made a mistake by playing Terry McLaurin. You didn't make a mistake by playing Terry McLaurin. It just didn't work out. And you have to, again, draw the difference between making a mistake and having a play not work. Starting Terry McLaurin last night was not a mistake. Anyone show me a website, a rankings model that had Terry McLaurin outside their top 24 last night. Show it to me. I don't think that it exists. Maybe there's some wacko on social media that had him wide receiver 32. I don't know. But everyone had him as a top 24 wide receiver. Everyone did. We talked about him on the show yesterday. Tyler Beaker discussed how this didn't line up to be a ceiling game for Terry McLaurin either. How he was concerned about him having a huge effort, but he also said, if I'm not mistaken, he'd play him anyway. And that's where we're at. So Terry McLaurin goes out and he catches one pass for 10 yards. Do we blame Daniels, who legitimately didn't throw a target at him in the first half? It's only the second time in his entire career that Terry McLaurin has played a half of football and not got a target. Do we blame Daniels? Somewhat. Sure. I think that's fair. Do we blame the coaching staff? Absolutely. You throw 32 passes in a game, and 2 of them go to Terry McLaurin. I don't care if Terry McLaurin's covered. You've got to throw him the football. Jayden Daniels, if he's covered and it's not working and you're not producing points, you're not moving the football, and you've got to throw the ball to Terry McLaurin. You've got to do it. And if it's picked off or knocked down, then it is. But you've got to. They threw him the ball twice. He had the same amount of targets as Zack. He had half as many targets as Noah Brown. He had the same amount of targets as Diami Brown. It is a one-off. Now, when I say it's a one-off, he had 19 yards a couple of weeks ago, but he scored twice. So in 2 of 3 games, he's been under 20 yards. But in 3 of 5 games, he's at 98 yards or better. Wasn't wrong playing him last night. You're starting him again next week. It was a terrible result last night. Just a rough one, and it happens at times. Finally, Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz's questions came in, and I said, look, Zach Ertz is 8-10. He's an 8-point guy. I was a little wrong last night. 6 catches for 47 yards. Now, the touchdown is what obviously shoots him to the moon this week, and he'll be a top 5 tight end, maybe even higher, right? 6 catches, 47 yards, and a touchdown. Touchdown didn't matter at all. It came with 28 seconds left in the game, so it didn't matter at all to the game. The game was already over. Great news that he got in the end zone, and there it is. So he went from 5 catches for 40 yards, which is 9 points. I said he was a 7-8 point guy. Okay, so exactly what it was. Went from that to having the touchdown and having him get 10, 11, 16 points. It was a big difference. Basically doubled what was expected from him. He is part of this offense, but he routinely is catching 4 balls for 40 yards. It's just what it is. So it was great if you played him, pat on the back for yourself. If you went against my advice and started him and got the result, that's fine. But understand, not really. It's just still going to be the same thing moving forward. That's only his 2nd touchdown this season. On the other side of things, Saquon Barkley, if I'm not mistaken, he has been tackled inside the 2-yard line 12 times now. It's remarkable he still has 8 rushing touchdowns. 12 times he's been tackled inside the 2-yard line. He still had a massive game last night. He almost had 200 scrimmage yards last night. Or did he? No, 198. 198 scrimmage yards last night. A couple of touchdowns. Another fantastic game. Someone was asking me about trading him this morning. If you have Barkley at this point, don't trade him. I mean, even if it's a great offer, why? I say this all the time. When you have a player who's the answer, and Barkley's the answer, why are we trading it for good players? Maybe someone bowls you over. Okay, I mean, maybe, right? I can't say don't ever do it, but I don't know why anyone would be considering trading Barkley because he's just doing it. And before you say, well, Ray, he's been tackled inside the 12-yard line or 2-yard line 12 times, and look what it. Yeah, and he's still a superstar. That worm eventually turns at some point. It just does. Now, Jalen Hurts had another tush push, another 1-yard touchdown. That's like his 8th or 9th 1-yard touchdown this year. I think it's his 8th 1-yard touchdown this year. So he's basically scoring all these touchdowns after Barkley gets tackled at the 2-yard line. 5 straight games with a touchdown for Hurts. I think he has 9 touchdown rushes his last 5 games. He's got a touchdown a game this year on the ground. He didn't do anything through the air, 220 and 0, but he had the rushing touchdown. So it wasn't a great effort. It wasn't necessarily even a strong effort. It was just an effort, right? It was okay. But I mean, dude is as likely to score a touchdown as almost anyone in football. Like even Derrick Henry. Like it's remarkable. He gets these stupid push touchdowns on a weekly basis. AJ Brown, 5 catches for 65 yards. Every game he's played 40 snaps, he's caught 5 balls for 65 yards. So you know what the floor is. There's been a couple of little bit bigger games, but no real ceiling games. There's been no 10-catch effort, no 150-yard game. I don't think he has a 2-touchdown game. So there hasn't been that superstar week-winning play for him. But the floor with him is crazy high. It's crazy high. It's just 15 points every week. And he did it again last night. Now, his teammate, DeVonta Smith, oof. That's 2 games in a row now where he's got, 4 catches for like 49 yards or something like that. DeVonta Smith prior to that, was averaging 6-7 catches for like 70 yards. And he hasn't been that guy the last 2 weeks. We can talk a little bit about his hamstring. I think it's fair to mention that. It's also fair to point out he ran 1 less route than AJ Brown last night and played 5 fewer snaps. So he was on the field the whole time. He was running routes the whole time. If he was hurt, he wouldn't be doing that. It's disappointing. I have said and maintained, and still will say and maintain, that DeVonta Smith is the top 25 wide receiver and that he should be started every week. The 28 passes Jalen Hurts threw last night was the most he's thrown in a month. We talked about this with Tyler Picker yesterday too. The fact that they've just ended up in a bunch of scenarios where they haven't had to throw the football a ton. That was the prediction that Tyler had yesterday. Again, Hurts didn't even get to 30 passes. There are better days ahead for DeVonta Smith. If you can still do trades and someone's bailing on DeVonta Smith, and they could very well be, that's a good target to look for if you need help with the wide receiver position. And then finally, Dallas Goedert, 5 catches, 61 yards. In 3 of 4 healthy games, take the game out where he hurt his ankle, 3 of his last 4 games, he's caught 5 balls for 60 yards. And the other game where he didn't, he scored a touchdown. So as we talked about, as I said yesterday, he's a top 12 tight end every week. It's been that way for the last month of healthy games he's played. Did it again last night, not sexy, but he got to those 11 points. He's back to running, playing like 85, 90% of the snaps. Grant Calcaterra is no longer a thing. Dallas Goedert, weekly tight end 1 moving forward. All right, so let's talk about some news and notes here in the NFL before we talk to Russell Clay. He'll visit us in about 10 or so minutes. Here are some of the news stories to discuss. DK Metcalf was a full participant in practice yesterday for Seattle. Barring something strange today, he's going to play for the Seahawks this weekend against the Niners. Fire him up. I've already seen a couple of questions with people with DK Metcalf. Fire him up. Don't there's no point to ask me, should I start DK Metcalf? Because the answer is yes. So start DK Metcalf this week. It certainly looks like he'll be good to go unless we hear something strange happening today as he returns from the knee injury. George Kittle on the other side of the field. We talked about Kittle and said, look, let's be cautious here. He's got a hamstring injury, but he's expected to practice. Let's see what the reports tell us on Thursday. He was a limited participant in practice yesterday, which is really good news. You don't need me to tell you that if Kittle's active, you play him, because we all know that. I think that's the direction we're trending toward at this point. We'll have to see on Friday if he has a hiccup at practice or anything comes out negatively. But right now, you got to look at him and think top 5 tight end this week. That's where I'm at 9 o'clock in the morning or 9:20 in the morning on the West Coast on a Friday. Tony Pollard, it's got the foot injury. We talked about this. We've talked about a lot this week, especially on Monday. We talked about it, I think, where we discussed the fact that, look, Pollard's got this huge workload. In his time with the Cowboys, there were always concerns because later in the year, he didn't look the same. Later in the year, the production was dwindling, and there was a lot of expectation that it was just workload related. Well, this year, his workload's exploded. He's touching it 20-plus times a week, right? So there's obviously just concerns because of his history there. Then he's got this foot issue he's dealing with. He missed some snaps last week as they were looking at him on the sideline. Tajay Spears is back now. He's back at practice. They're calling things like workload management in practice. So it's very likely that Pollard's going to see a lot of limited practices the rest of the way. So seeing a limited tag on him in a practice is not something that should lean you in one direction or other with Tony Pollard. That's probably just going to be the way it is. Pollard is still a top 25 running back, but I'm a little nervous. He's where I said it's just a few minutes ago, I'm targeting DeVonta Smith in the trade market. I'm not targeting Tony Pollard in the trade market. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe he'll be fine and continue to 20 touches a week. But I'm not trading for him if the price is a full, if the price is running back 14, I'm not making that trade for Tony Pollard. I have personal concerns. We'll see, though. As of right now, it doesn't seem like there's any doubt that he's going to play this weekend. Josh Jacobs is likely to be limited in a lot of practices, too. He's got a quad injury right now. There's been multiple injuries he's dealt with the last couple of weeks. It kind of changes every week, but there's always seemingly something. Right now, he's expected to play against the Bears, and Jeff Mans has spoken very highly about this matchup and how he loves it for Josh Jacobs. At this point in time, fully expect Josh Jacobs to play, and I'm fully expecting those 15 to 20 touches that we've grown to love Josh Jacobs for. I will point out, and we'll talk a little bit later about this with Russell Clay, MarShawn Lloyd, the young running back who's missed all this time with the ankle injury, seems really likely he's activated this weekend. I don't think that's because they're concerned about Jacobs. You could read it that way. You could. I don't think that's what it is. But with Jacobs continually being beat up, it's very important to know, is Lloyd going to be the handcuff there? Is he the number 2 guy? Is he going to pass Wilson? What are they going to do in that backfield? Because Jacobs frequently is dinged up, and you obviously would love to have the running back 1 on that Packers offense. The running back 2 on the Steelers offense, a player who everyone has wanted to be the number 1 forever. Like, we're going on years now, people wanting Jalen Warren to be the number 1 running back of the Steelers. We're now also going on years now of Najee Harris being the number 1 running back. At some point, you would think people would figure out that, you can read a stat sheet and might tell you some great things about Warren, but the coaching staff continues to give the ball 18 times a week to Najee Harris year after year after year. It's Najee Harris's backfield. If you haven't come to the realization, just admit it, folks. It's okay. You're wrong. It's fine. Maybe they're wrong too. But the fact is, it is what it is. And that is, Harris is getting the ball 18 times and Warren's getting it 10. We talked about Warren. He had a nice game last time out, but he fumbled at the 1-yard line, which I brought up earlier this week and said, this is concerning. Well, now he's got a back injury. And it's not clear at this point in time that the injury is significant enough that it will cause him to miss game action. But I always use I have a back injury myself, and sometimes it's hard for me to sit in the chair. Playing a football game with a back injury. So very important to see what they say about Warren today. Is he able to practice? It'll probably be limited. We'll have to have a beat writer dig in there and see. I don't think we're at the point where we're scared about Warren playing this weekend, but it is something we have to pay close attention to. And even if he's active this weekend and you're down to a flex option of Warren and someone else, maybe you go in the direction of Warren because it is a back injury, and that always makes me a little bit nervous, as I think it should. Darnell Mooney, this is not good. He was added to the injury report with an Achilles injury yesterday. Now, I wasn't able to find out this morning anything overtly, here's the definitive statement on Mooney. We'll obviously get an update here today. So by the time you hear this, we might even know what's going on with Darnell Mooney. But when you hear a guy missing time at practice with an Achilles injury, Mooney is he's gotten to the point too where he's like a must start, right? Like he's getting 5 catches every week. He's getting 8-10 targets every week. We've talked about that here on the show many times. And now he's got an Achilles injury. So he's one to watch very closely today. Ray McLeod would become a dart throw option as a flex if Mooney is out. Do I want to start? Realize dart throw. Because as much as Ray McLeod could step up, Ray McLeod's 5'9", he's 190 pounds. He's not necessarily a direct replacement for Darnell Mooney. I don't think Cordero Hodge is, but Cordero Hodge would see his snap share fly through the roof because they basically run 3 wide receiver sets and use 3 guys the whole time. So we'll continue to watch this situation. Hopefully Mooney's good to go, and this is just a hiccup. That's something to keep an eye on. Nico Collins, who didn't play last week, we're hearing all positivity from the Texans now coming back from that hamstring injury. It sounds very likely that he will play this weekend after being close last weekend and not playing, and disappointingly not playing. Collins is, according to Aaron Wilson, who covers the team, 100% ready to go. So it's not even – he's going to go this week. Collins, when he hit the injured list, was, I think, leading the NFL in receiving yards. And his addition to the offense with the Texans is huge. Obviously, they're all been without Collins and Stephon Diggs. That has not helped C.J. Stroud at all. C.J. Stroud is not look great. And I mean, not even statistically, he hasn't looked good the last couple of weeks. He's regressed from where he was earlier this season and certainly from where he was last year. Collins is wide receiver 1. Even though we thought Diggs could end up being the more productive fantasy guy this year and was the better add on draft day because of cost at fantasyguru.com, Collins is unquestionably, he's CJ Stroud's boo. He's his number 1. So having him back in the offense changes everything. It changes Tank Dell, who no longer has to deal with the other team's top focus. He now can settle in a little bit more behind Collins. Collins brings that ability to help stretch the field and draw coverage to him, opens up things offensively too. So his return is big, not just for us using Collins, but for the entire offense. Hopefully that'll help CJ Stroud get back into the area of being a top 10 quarterback every week, because he's struggled to do that. JuJu Smith-Schuster was listed as a full participant yesterday. So the hamstring heard around the world that has been an issue apparently is good enough that he's going to play. So, the last time he played a full game, he had 7 catches for 130 yards. And that was week 5. So a while ago. It was a little bit of a while ago. But it sounds like JuJu's going to play this week. Just a reminder that JuJu and Hopkins don't cancel each other out. Hopkins is going to see more time outside. JuJu will see more time in the slot. In essence, the Ray Rice role will be more JuJu Smith-Schuster than DeAndre Hopkins. I am not saying that we're going to be expecting 7 catches for 100 yards every week from JuJu. No. But he's more of that guy in this offense in terms of the fit schematically. Hopkins is still the better play this week. We'll have to see how things play out. It'll be the rankings each week could be very much guided upon the slot coverage on the opponent versus their coverage out wide. So right now, I would say that Hopkins is a wide receiver 2, right at the bottom is wide receiver 2, top end wide receiver 3, wide receiver 25-30 zone. And JuJu Smith-Schuster is probably in that 35-40 zone. So you really don't want to play JuJu this week. I'd be very reluctant to do that because we want to see how he moves and how the offense operates as well. But it sounds like he's finally going to return. Now, his teammate, Harrison Butker, kind of out of nowhere has a knee injury. It's going to land him on the injured list. He has a meniscus issue with his plant leg that needed to be repaired, so he's going to miss the time. So they put him on the injured reserve. Spencer Schrader is now the kicker. If you had Butker, and this game, kicker leagues are stupid, but I just wanted to point this out in case you had Butker and hadn't heard the news or weren't paying attention, because even though kickers are human beings, they shouldn't be fantasy plays. Butker's loss is significant, obviously. We have rankings over at fantasyguru.com. Schrader, who I'm looking at his numbers right now, 99% extra points he hit. He hit 2/3 of his field goals in college when he's at Notre Dame. I wouldn't necessarily pivot to him. There's probably better options on the waiver wire for you. But we had a great article written by Mike Horn recently, and we've obviously got the rankings over at fantasyguru.com, which if you click the subscribe tab in the top right corner and you sign up for the product we have at fantasyguru.com for $99.99, you get all the football stuff the rest of the year, including those rankings. So you might want to check that out. Finally, at the tight end position, before we talk to Russell Clay, Sam LaPorta's got a shoulder injury. We've talked about him multiple times this week. He did not practice again on Thursday. Today is big for him. The AC joint in his shoulder is not right. Is it 50-50 he plays this week, something like that. Friday will be key for him. LaPorta, to me, not someone you're trying to force in the lineup. Even if he's active, you're just not trying to force him into the lineup because of his injury, because of the matchup, because of how he's played for the most part, performed for the most part this year. And then finally, Dalton Kincaid. Just before the show started, was ruled out this week, so that situation is cleared. The board is cleared, if you will. Dawson Knox will obviously be the pivot in the Bills' offense. I got 3 questions in Discord within like 5 minutes of the news breaking this morning. I said it on this show earlier this week. I said it on the Wednesday show with Jeff Mans on SiriusXM. Dawson Knox for me is like tight end 14-15. So I would not just slot him in as Dalton Kincaid. The real key for Dawson Knox obviously will be, does he get in the end zone? It's kind of much like the Zach Ertz. He doesn't get in the end zone, he gets you 5 or 6 points. He gets in the end zone and gets you 12 or 13. So if you had Kincaid, it's easy to pivot to Knox. I don't mind that at all. If you need help with the tight end position this week, Knox is a fine pivot too, but he is not a lock to see high volume. He's obviously not a lock to be someone that pays off the expectations if your expectations are that he's a tight end 1 this week. All right. It's that time of the show. We're about a half hour in. On Fridays, when we're half an hour in, we talk to our man, Russell Clay. I was wondering if Russell, because of my problems with my backdrop, because I'm having to just use the green screen today because for some reason I can't get the thing to work. I was wondering if Russell is at home with his piano or not, or if he's out as a beat reporter at some NFL stadium. So let's bring him on and find out. Russell Clay at fantasyguru.com.
What's going on, Ray? Here live in Philly. Gonna bring on Saquon now.
No. Well, that would have been good. That would have been quite the coup. Yeah. Sorry, Russell, we love you, but sorry, I'm going to talk to Saquon for the next. How you doing, bud?
I'm good, man. Fun game last night. Washington's offense seems to be Cliff Kingsburying itself, but that Philly offense is built for the playoffs, even though their team is chaos.
Yeah, Russell Clay again at fantasyguru.com every Friday about 12:30 Eastern time. I talked earlier about I didn't talk about Kingsbury, and that's a good point, by the way. But I did talk about Jayden Daniels and, the fact that obviously he was great at the start of the season in the fantasy space. Of late, his production has decreased. Didn't look great last night. Didn't make the big play last night. Where are we at right now with Jayden Daniels? Is he still the golden boy that he was for everyone a month ago, or are you seeing signs of slippage here?
Well, and Ray, I will ask you about your backdrop in a moment here.
Okay.
But we saw this with Caleb to a more extreme degree because he didn't have as high of a ceiling early on. But both of these quarterbacks, of course, we can blame the coaching, and the Bears really blame the coaching. Some of this is mid-season. Teams have film on these young quarterbacks, and these few things that were really working, they've taken away now. And now we're going to the next layer of quarterback play, and that is a quarterback's rookie season. Fantasy points, unless they're Cam Newton or someone in those rare instances like Robert Griffin when he had Shanahan and every single great head coach we talk about now. This is going to happen. I'm still incredibly high on Daniels, but yeah, the rest of the year, especially with their schedule, could be pretty rough, Ray. It is rookie season, so yeah, he's got a lot on his plate now.
Dynasty League, is he still a top 10 quarterback?
Oh yeah. No, I'm not flinching there. Again, but I also didn't flinch when Trevor Lawrence was the worst quarterback in the league his rookie year. So, I am hardened by failure. I didn't give up on Jared Goff after he looked like a little duckling running out there his rookie year. So, yeah, I need a lot to just give up on a quarterback in year one.
Which I think you should need a lot. So I think that's the right way to play it, Russell. Russell Clay at fantasyguru.com. Another quarterback question. JJ McCarthy was obviously drafted, and there was all the talk about would he start in week one. Then he hurt his knee. Sam Darnold's played well, though he's regressed here the last couple of weeks as well. McCarthy did have knee surgery. We heard he had PRP, so there was an infection in there, blah, blah, blah. You're a dynasty guy over at fantasyguru.com. So where is JJ McCarthy since he's in the news right now? Where is McCarthy for you? Because, there's a chance that Darnold's done well enough that they consider bringing him back. And is the knee injury, does it play into that? What are you thinking?
For a lot of reasons that teams didn't bring in Joe Flacco this offseason, which is why the Colts were in such a weird situation a few weeks ago. They have this backup who's overqualified to be a backup, and they have a rookie quarterback who's struggling. So I really hope if they do go with McCarthy, they do not bring Darnold back. They can get a lot for him in trade. Someone will have him be their starter next year. I will say there are some cracks in the painting right now for Darnold the last couple weeks. It does feel like we're starting to see some of the old Darnold coming out. So I think the Vikings organization knows where the ceiling is long-term. But like you said, if they bring in Darnold next year, that's a lot of pressure on McCarthy, because if he's not top tier, people are going to start saying, well, we know they have a baseline guy. So why don't they just go to him? And then the Colts are in hell now, because they did it and Flacco sucked, and now they got to go back to the other guy. So when you see teams seemingly pass over good players, there's a lot of scenarios where it's something like this, where it's like, yes, he's better, but we have other things going on that make it not make sense.
Boo. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Russell Clay at fantasyguru.com. I can't believe I waited like a minute to do that. For those people, Sam Darnold seeing ghosts, it was a weak attempt at a joke. I don't know. Let's say May 1st. MarShawn Lloyd was someone we were talking about with the Packers. Yep. And then he hurt his ankle and he just vanished. And Jacobs has been fine. Wilson stepped up and been a good support piece. Now we're hearing MarShawn Lloyd is close to return. Maybe it happens this weekend. I talked earlier about the fact that Josh Jacobs is starting to get a little hitch in the giddy up, like he's starting to get beat up. We know that this offense is going to be very effective with the Packers. Who is MarShawn Lloyd from a skills perspective, Russell? Yeah. And if we're in a 14-team league, do we need to pay attention?
So MarShawn Lloyd, interestingly enough, was a featured guy at South Carolina. He goes to USC, and this has been a theme for USC the last 3 to 5 years, where, Jordan Addison wins the Biletnikoff at Pittsburgh, and he's like, oh, he's at USC now. He's going to get the same. And then he was a secondary piece. So MarShawn Lloyd goes to USC with all these big expectations, and they used him as like a third down committee back. Clearly, when the Packers drafted him, they saw him as an Aaron Jones replacement. Super explosive, has way more juice than Josh Jacobs does at this point in his career. But like we see with a lot of these running backs now, they probably brought him in to be that secondary nice addition to Jacobs and not the replacement. So kind of like what we're seeing with Ekeler right now, right? Ekeler has turned into a major fantasy piece in the second half of the year for Washington, purely due to now they're using him as a third down back. So when you see Lloyd out there, especially in that Packers offense, if he's getting snaps, there's always a chance at a big play. So I'm in from a talent perspective. The role might have to build up. And do we get there by the end of this regular season? Probably not. But yeah, he only needs 8 to 10 touches to be a nice flex play.
We've talked about Trey Benson recently, but he's had a couple of nice games. So just wanted to toss him out there again, because it seems like if James Conner were to go down, Benson could be looking at 15 touches a week. And we've seen his productivity in a much more curtailed workload the last couple of weeks, but seems like the speed of the game is starting to make sense to him. He's starting to find the holes, that kind of thing. Is Benson, a top 20 running back without question if he's the lead back for this team and James Conner's down?
Trey Benson, I really liked him coming into the year. And those first couple games, Ray, and I think you're kind of alluding to this, he has developed as the year has gone on. Those first couple of games were really rough. He had no idea what he was doing. He's looked great. He's looked like the guy we hoped he would. And if anything does happen to Conner, great, I'm in. However, James Conner has humbled me once again. Age 29 James Conner rocks. He's the man. He's crushing it. He's a leader in the locker room, and he's playing amazing. So at this point, what is it, week 11? My hopes of Benson emerging are foiled. But yes, amazing handcuff. If anything happens to Conner, I'm very, very in on what he could do.
Russell Clay at fantasyguru.com. Now, normally when we talk about the Jaguars, we talk about Trevor Lawrence. Okay, Trevor Lawrence out again this week. Okay. Let's talk about the guy that was drafted to be the main pass catcher, Brian Thomas. Brian Thomas, kind of like Jayden Daniels. Started out pretty well, was getting in the end zone, doing things, and then he hurt his chest. Last couple of games hasn't produced anything. Now he's working with Mac Jones. And that's the point I made earlier in the week when I was talking about Brian Thomas. For all the good Brian Thomas has done, there are way too many games where he's getting 3, 4, 5 targets. Like, there's no volume here for an offense that seemingly needs to get him the ball. So where are we at with Brian Thomas here down the stretch? Not long-term. We love Brian Thomas long-term, but where are we at in 2024 with him?
This is my white flag, Ray. It's over, man. My number one goal for the Jags offense right now is just suck the rest of the year. Get the staff out of there,
right?
And go towards next year, because this is a mess. I mean, I don't know how hurt Trevor is. I do know Christian Kirk's out for the year. I do know Brian Thomas suffered a rib injury a few weeks ago, and they have not gone to him at all since. And there were rumors he was going to miss games, and then he just didn't. And I don't think it's a mistake that he went from he's going to miss time to he's playing and basically a decoy. So it's a mess. Mac Jones is what Mac Jones is. Now, I will say the Vikings were a brutal matchup for him, so that's fair to say. Should be a little easier the next couple weeks, but even though the Jags schedule opens up in the second half of the year, the season's done. It's over. So I like Brian Thomas, but unless Trevor Lawrence is starting, I'm not really. It was so bad last week that what did Darnold throw 4 picks and they still lost? They got one early touchdown drive off an interception, and they were in Minnesota territory the whole game, and they couldn't do anything. So I'm done with Jags for the rest of the year.
What about the Bears? You done with the Bears? The Bears change OC, like that's going to solve the world. They're trying to move pieces around. That's another coaching staff that needs to just be changed. Let's just be honest about it. Eberflus is not the answer there. Rome Odunze, much like Thomas, came into the season with a lot of hype, a lot of hope. You know, he and Caleb Williams are going to lead this franchise to greatness for the next 10 years. There's been a couple of moments with Odunze, but, you know, you can't catch balls if your quarterback's not throwing them to you, you know, or at least throwing catchable balls to you. But where are we at with Odunze? Because, you know, there were a lot of people, not just in the dynasty space, in the season-long space, that were taking him as a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. Just hasn't happened. Is there a dream where reality comes from the dream of him actually being a usable piece down the stretch?
So my initial read, right? We have our initial reads, then we do research and either debunk, is there ghosts in the house or is there not, right? And my initial thought is, I watched that JSN off-season interview where people asked him about Shane Waldron, and he clammed up and he was like, "What? Oh, is this live?" And we're like, "Oh God, that's bad news."
Right.
So he's gone. So I'm like, okay, maybe they'll open this up again. I know they have the personnel to succeed. And then you look at their schedule, Ray. We were just talking about the Vikings. They have them twice. They have the Packers twice. There's the 49ers. Like, this second half schedule for them is brutal. So any optimism I had for them opening up this offense and getting better, I do think it will get better. But we have to take the defensive matchups, which so many at our site do such a great job breaking down. So I want to be optimistic, and then they play the Packers this week, and then they play the Vikings, who are an awesome defense this week. So how much better can they get when they're facing that rugged schedule?
Russell Clay of fantasyguru.com. Another young wide receiver, Lad McConkey, who at the start of the year was basically like, look, Josh Palmer is there, but McConkey's got a chance to lead this team in receiving just because of the wide receiver room. Even if he does lead the team in receiving, it's not likely to be a great effort because, you know, let's face it, they're not throwing for 4,500 yards this season with the new OC and the new head coach. And I think to date, McConkey has basically been exactly as expected. That also means he has one game of 70 yards and he has one game of 6 catches. So while I see a lot of people like doing victory laps with Lad McConkey, which is weird to me because he's scoring like 12 PPR points a week. Like, he's not doing anything. Any reason to expect that to change? Because the offense has improved through the air. Justin Herbert's playing great. And the offense, you know, they've thrown it a little bit more here of late. Any chance that McConkey's anything other than that 12-point-a-week guy in the second half?
Short answer would be no.
Okay.
I love what their offense is doing, and a sign of a great coaching staff and organization is seeing the staff adjust to what the personnel is. Greg Roman went in there, right? And we saw it the first month. he's going to run, win a game 17-13 and get out of there. He came out of the bye, and him and Harbaugh and Herbo, I call him Herbo.
Yeah, why?
Justin Herbert got in the film room, and they have adjusted to what they have, and they have adjusted to Justin Herbert's game. And this offense is fantastic. Like you mentioned, though, even at the apex of this passing game, it's still not high volume. They're just really efficient. Quentin Johnston, right, has had a lot of good games at this point. I still don't trust him in that role. McConkey's awesome, but they still have the running game. They still haven't completely gone away from that. And once they get these leads, they are not, they're not going for 350 passing yards every week. So while I love what this offense is doing, McConkey, like Khalil Shakur, I know he's getting 5 catches a game. I know he's getting 6 catches a game. I don't really know that with McConkey yet. Can he? Yeah, he can be a Monroe St. Brown-ish type role, but he's not in that yet. So yeah, he's a flex right now for me with upside, but nothing more than that.
Russell Clay joins us every Friday. This is the Friday he's with us here on Fantasy Sports Daily. What about Tank Dell? I talked earlier in the show about Nico Collins. It looks like he's going to play this week after the oddness of last week, being activated but not being active off the injured list. Tank Dell, I have a problem. I'm a bit of a sizeist, I guess. He's 5'9", 160 pounds. Like, he's a little dude, okay? So logically speaking, if he's our number one wide receiver, we got problems. And, you see the time that Collins has been out. No catches one game, 4 catches for 35 yards, 5 catches for 39 yards. Had one big game, which he can do because he can lift the lid on defense at times. Is Tank Dell better with Nico Collins on the field? And who is Tank Dell? Because he's only averaging 9.9 PPR points a game this season. Is that all we're going to get from Tank Dell? Is he more name than game?
So the Tank Dell this year feels a lot more accurate to what Tank Dell is than, what looked like maybe T.Y. Hilton-ish career outcome in his rookie season. So this is more what I expected initially. Dell is a good player. It's pretty clear he's going to be a long-term weapon for them. Is he a guy that should or will ever get to, 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns? Or because he had 700 yards last year, but I think it was in like 8 games. So that set the bar really high for a guy that, as you mentioned, is very slight framed. There's no real history beyond Deshaun Jackson and T.Y. Hilton of a guy like that having and they weren't real high ceilings. They were like, 1,200. Deshaun Jackson was the classic example of a boom bust, right? It was like 20 points or 7. So that's the hope for Tank Dell. Probably better with Nico Collins on the field. But he is, this feels more like what I expected him to be. So an inconsistent wide receiver 3 with 20-point upside in the right matchup.
Russell, right now, not in the future, right now, who is CeeDee Lamb? There's questions about his health. There's questions about the offense. There's questions about the quarterback. I do find it very interesting that he's not going to match expectations. Like, there's no way that's going to happen. He's averaging 17.4 PPR points a game this year. In 2022, it was 17.7. So, last year was a magical season. Where are we at right now, though? I've heard people say they want to trade him. I've heard people say they don't think he's a top 20 wide receiver at this point in time. Where is CeeDee Lamb for you right now?
Well, from what I saw from Cooper Rush last week, that's not going to work for CeeDee Lamb. I can tell you that. You mentioned it. I looked up who the leaders were in wide receiver. He was really high in those season-long rankings for total points. I was shocked. As you mentioned, he's not too far off of what he was doing last year. No Dak, though, I think crushes that ceiling. So those 30, 40-point games, I do think are out the window for this year. If they go to Trey Lance, I mean, Trey Lance has more upside for the Cowboys. Could be a low-volume passing game, and if that's the case, I don't think we're getting that same volume or even close. So those that want to sell, I get it. For season-long leagues, though, what are you going to get? Because the cat's out of the bag. We saw them with Cooper Rush. It's a nightmare. Their season's done. CeeDee Lamb's keeled over at points, just like, what's my life going on right now? So not going to be a career year. Not going to be last year. We got 7-8 games to go. I think the Cowboys are just kind of ready to be done with the year. So he'll still be in that 10 to 15 point range. It's just not going to be the 30, 40 point games.
Russell Clay at fantasyguru.com, as I mentioned earlier, and those of you that watch us on a consistent basis know if you're watching us live on Facebook or on YouTube, you can actually leave comments and questions that we always address here on the show. So let's do a little bit of that here, Russell. Let's talk to Justin K, who says he's facing Josh Allen this week. And then the first part of his question is, should I play Shakir in the flex to offset that? So let me ask you that question before we even answer the actual question. Are you the kind of person that looks at your opponent's matchup, or your matchup that week with the opponent, and tailor your starting lineup to your opponent? Or do you just play your best guys that week?
I rarely do anything like this. Rarely locks into my analysis. I will say I've seen it work out before. So if you've done this and it's worked out before, it's hard not to think this way. I would just say Shakir. There's a weird thing going on with Shakir right now because he's not scoring touchdowns. He's having a great year. He's going to end with 80, 90 catches this year. And in PPR, I always say if you can get above that 10 points every week, that is such a valuable asset. As opposed to some of these guys, they're either 15 or 2. The 2 is worse than the 15. So, or the 2 is worse than, missing out on a slight ceiling. So I would just say Shakir, and I wouldn't really factor in the opponent. Already ahead with Barkley. That's awesome. Justin, you're probably going to win this week with those 34 points.
Sean says he finds it cute that someone is starting Quentin Johnston over Drake London. I find that insane. But hey, man, more power to people. Love being heroes. Isn't that funny, Russell? People love being heroes. As Jeff Mann says all the time, you don't get bonus points for difficulty, right? Like, that's crazy.
I've tried to be the hero many years ago. You just get humbled after a while and you say, you know what? I'm just going to go with what everybody else thinks on this one for once. I don't need to be that guy.
Albert M's got a good question here. Because if you look at we're all trying to figure this out. You look at the Dolphins, the offensive line is different. And it's not performing anywhere near the level it did last season. But all the skill players are the same. Yet they can't seem to figure this out. So Albert has a question. He's got Tua Tagovailoa right now, and he doesn't have a great feeling about him, which I understand. So he's being offered, I assume, Justin Herbert. Remember, there's more than one Herbert, folks. There's more than one B. Robinson running back. First names help.
Yes, there is.
There is.
The Robinson one, Ray, gets me every time. I'm like, because Brian's still a top 24 guy every week. So it's like,
Yeah. So we're assuming this is Justin Herbert because of the context of the question. Justin Herbert was offered to him for Ricky Pearsall. I think on the surface, that's a trade you can absolutely accept. The question is, does Herbert improve this team over Tua Tagovailoa the rest of the way? And if you do get Herbert, do you drop Tua? Because do you want to be playing the game of which guy ranked 11 to 14 that week you're going to start? That's a problem that we run into too, Russell.
Yeah, and Pearsall is – I do wonder if Juwan Jennings is the main intermediate guy. Pearsall clearly has the talent to score touchdowns. That was all him on that touchdown last week. So we like that. He will continue to have big plays in that offense. They're going to open it up for him. But with this group, I'm going to have a hell of a time getting him in that starting lineup. So I would fire off, take Herbert. Then you have a starter for the rest of the year, set and forget. I'm a set and forget guy. I get my guy and it's over. So that's what I would do, Albert.
TJ Deal has the following. I clicked on the wrong one. Here's TJ Deal. Superflex question. We're just talking about the Bears. You want to go quarterback, but it's like, ooh, can we trust Caleb Williams to get us 13 points? And it's like, ooh, I can't play Jonnu Smith over Caleb Williams. I can't do that. Maybe you could, Russell. But could you play David Njoku over Caleb Williams in a super flex this week?
Could I? Could I think about this, TJ? I could think about this. I think this is a fair question based on what Caleb's been doing. Ultimately, I can't just quarterback. It's so much easier to score points. But this is a good question, TJ. Maybe not the Jonnu portion, but Njoku versus Williams is a real question. I would go with Caleb, but I get it. I get it, TJ.
I'm looking at, and all scoring systems are different, right? But right now we get about 14 points a week from Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
And Njoku, where's Njoku? He's at about 11.5. So in theory, Williams is more weekly basis. As Russell said, if one of these guys going for 25, it's more likely to be Williams. But yeah, it's not a crazy question. It just isn't. Sean H has a question. Some wide receivers are just talking about Tank Dell. If we're looking at this week, Russell, Tank Dell, Tillman, who's been on fire, or Sutton, who quietly has been pretty good here the last couple of games.
Yeah. Sutton's been awesome. Tillman's been awesome. And this has been a big theme in our chat of questions, what to do with these Tillman and Sutton type guys who have really emerged. I mean, Sutton had that 0 catch game, and they have been feeding him ever since, and it's worked really well. So I would go with Tillman because I'm a sicko, and I'm all in on Tillman. He's been awesome. He's been a top 5 guy since he's been installed as that featured guy. I know a couple weeks ago it was a last-second touchdown, but the 2 weeks prior have me pretty locked in on him as high-end wide receiver 2, low-end wide receiver 1 every week.
I'd go Tillman too for what it's worth. David P. asked the following question, my favorite, the running back question. We had a group of running backs that are on the waiver wire. We need to pick somebody up. Raheem Mostert, who they are saying only played 8 snaps last week because of the matchup. Whether you believe that or not, he only played 8 snaps. And all of them were on third down. Didn't see a single first or second down snap. Mostert is one of the options. Estime, who apparently took over the backfield for the Broncos last week, but we've thought that a lot of times in Sean Payne's tenure.
Well, what does that mean, right, Ray?
Yeah. Jaylen Warren, who I talked about on the show earlier this week, he fumbled at the 1-yard line last week. He ended up tweaking his back yesterday and being pulled out of practice, so we don't know where he's at physically right now. And then Gus Edwards, my favorite, who I've talked about. I think it was yesterday's show, actually. I talked about it at length as my example. Gus Edwards gives you 7 points a week. That's it. Or it's 5 to 7 points a week. Unless he scores a touchdown, then it's 13. He's the least upside running back you could ever use. But he always runs for 50 yards. So if you need 5 points, he's your guy. What are we doing this week? All these guys have question marks, which is, again, why they're probably on the waiver wire in this smaller league.
I will say there have been weeks in my many years where I have needed 5 points, right?
Yeah.
And so Gus Edwards, there is a time for you when we're down in the dumps, but hopefully not for anybody this week. I was going to say Warren's in a really nice role, and suddenly a really nice Pittsburgh Steelers offense that's wide open. I would probably go with Mostert here. You mentioned Estime. Yes, he did emerge as the starter, but what does that mean in Denver? They still have McLaurin. I don't think, Javonte only had 3 touches. He did play 29% of the snaps. So even if Estime is getting 15 touches, it's probably 15 rushing attempts. He could be in the Gus Edwards range for a little while.
Sammy H, going back to players that have been discussed there, at least teams that have been discussed there. We've talked about the Bears, so let's bring up DJ Moore. I talked about JuJu Smith-Schuster earlier. Looks like he's going to return after missing 5 weeks with the hamstring injury. And then we've got Deontay Johnson, who for 2 weeks has been active, but not even been on the football field. This is a tough one. I mean, the obvious answer is DJ Moore because these other 2 guys, what the hell do you got? But DJ Moore's been catching 2 or 3 balls for 30 yards for a month now. What are you doing here?
I know. And if you have Moore, it's a very strange situation because we know the talent's there. And when we watch the games, it's like, hey, that's DJ Moore out there. He's running routes like it's DJ Moore, and it's just not happening. So we could be optimistic. There's a reason to be optimistic with the new offensive situation. They could be going to him more. He was clearly pissed off about something.
Mm-hmm.
My hope is it's the OC and not the quarterback. But if he's soaking around this week again, like he was these prior few weeks, and he has another bad game, might be another that this would be the end for me. And I'd say, okay, he's on our bench from here on. So Joe, again, this is what we're dealing with. If it is the OC and he gets 10 targets this week and everything's back to like how DJ Moore we know he is, then we're set for the rest of the year and he's an auto starter again. But if he's sulking around and pissed off and waddling off the fields, then it might be over for this year.
Bryce, you had a question here about the backfield of the Broncos. You just missed it. So rewind the show. Russell just talked about it 4 minutes ago. You must have just missed what he had to say. He was talking about Estime there. Tony T is in a dynasty league, Superflex tight end premium. Oh, we're just doing everything in this league. Can you explain the value of draft picks and how much age factors into the value of players? You're our dynasty guy. The dynasty room has been really busy of late over at fantasyguru.com. I have said many times that for me, picks, who cares? I don't know if it's pick 1 in the draft, pick 3 in the draft, pick 9 in the draft. I can go through my dynasty league team and read off the litany of players who have failed that were top 10 picks year after year. I like players. No one else does. Everyone else wants picks. So talk to us about Tony's question here. What is the value of draft picks and age when we're talking dynasty?
So we are seeing, right, exactly. This is the year for what you're talking about, right? We have 30-year-old running backs, league-winning dynasty players. The 2017 running back class will not go away. All your young running backs you've drafted over the last 8 years do not matter. Sad for all of us, but it's still McCaffrey, Henry, and Saquon. That's an hour conversation on its own, though. For this specifically, rookie drafts, Tony, with Superflex and tight end premium are so much deeper. If you have a late first round rookie pick, that's where guys like Justin Herbert get drafted. The secondary quarterbacks, the Brock Bowers, the guys like Justin Jefferson went at 110 in rookie drafts. So like Ray said, you can count many guys you missed on. And then the order of the drafts are not always in order, like best player. Odell Beckham was not a top guy in these types of rookie drafts because all the quarterbacks go early, except for, the secondary ones. And then we have all these wide receivers, and sometimes the top wide receivers in the class are not the guys who you pick. Look at Brian Thomas this year. He was a 110 pick, 111, and you got him for pennies compared to some of the other guys that, were 101, 102, 103. So value the whole first round. And if you do want to trade it, make sure you're getting a ton, because during rookie draft time, the 105 in a one quarterback league is basically a 110, 111. So there you go, Tony.
Would you, following up on this, Russell, would you be more inclined to trade those picks now or wait until April 10th? Like, to me, I'd wait, but that's me. What would you do?
100% wait. It's probably 100% value increase if you wait the week before the draft or as the players are getting drafted and everyone's kind of like, oh, I want that guy on my team. And then, right, this is when you go get the Derrick Henry in the offseason. Oh, he's 31. So many fantasy championships got shifted this offseason in dynasty leagues because people traded for Saquon or Derrick Henry. So, yeah.
Final question before we shut things down here. And by the way, I see your comment there, Eric. Keep the faith. You got Terry McLaurin last night, did a lot of people in, but there's people that do everyone in all week. So we're rooting for you, Eric. Joe's got a question about back to your favorite team. Let's end it there. The Jaguars. ETN. I mean, Bigsby's got the ankle now, and he's missing practice, and he wasn't really on the field much last week. Is ETN taking back over? And what is his outlook the rest of the way? Because disappointment to date, but could he be a thing down the stretch?
I love Travis Etienne. He could be the starter again. His starter is Mac Jones. If Trevor Lawrence gets back in there, for sure. I could see some upside, but it is hell, Joe. They're having a hell year. Doug Peterson hates his own team. Press Taylor is just waving in the wind. It's a nightmare, Joe. So the only team more dysfunctional than them is the Eagles that I've watched this year that's played them, but they have so much talent, it doesn't matter. So it's a mess. So Etienne's on the bench for now. Wouldn't drop him, but it's rough right now.
Russell Clay at fantasyguru.com joins us every Friday at about 12:30 Eastern Standard Time. We answer your questions. We talk dynasty. We talk keeper value, all those kind of things here like we did today. What do you got the next couple days here before Sunday action over at the website, Russell?
Yeah, only a few more weeks of college football before we lock things up for the year and get to the playoffs. So we got some more DFS going on there. I have an article coming out that's usually out tonight or tomorrow morning for the slate. We have obviously this show. We have the Circa betting show that comes up after this. So I'll be on there firing away with Rob Brink. We'll be talking about the staff's picks against the spread in the Circa contest. Always a fun time seeing there's so many unique opinions on there that, Ted will be here and some guy will be there and Jeff will be here and Tyler will be there. So it's fun to always parse through those. And draft chat. We're in the dynasty chat. We're in the season-long chat. We're doing all that. Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson tonight, everybody. Come on.
Yeah.
I'm gonna watch, but like this, I don't want to see Mike Tyson fighting at this point in his life. But yeah, so that's pretty much it for me the next couple days.
Yeah, Paul said he could have taken Tyson in his prime. I call shenanigans on that. No, he would not have. He would have got knocked out in Kingdom Come like everyone else did. Russell Clay, again, every Friday with us, as you can see there on the screen, $99 for the football product. The rest of the way, that gets you seasonal, DFS, and wagering, all three of them, for $99 the rest of the season. The only thing you don't get is the Super Bowl betting package, which is a separate thing. But everything else, every article, every ranking, every chat room, every live stream, all of it for $99 the rest of the season, so you can get Russell's work in all these various areas. Russell, thanks for joining us today. We'll talk to you again next Friday. Good luck and have a good weekend.
Thanks, Ray.
You got it. Russell Clay, I'm Ray Flowers. This has been Fantasy Sports Daily, Monday through Friday at 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. We fire things up. We go about an hour. Went a little extra for you all today because you had those questions. Happy to answer them for you. He's Russell. I'm Ray. We'll be back on Monday here on Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by fantasyguru.com.